Now let's take you back to that devastating story now, and the latest developments following that car crash in Limpopo 2 days ago. Families of the departed are yet to find out if they'll be burying their loved ones anytime soon. Provincial officials are assisting with the identification process of the 17 victims that were burnt beyond recognition. Now the crash happened between a 22-seater bus and an SUV near Nqobile. Now eNCA Nqobile Madlala has more on that story. When we spoke earlier, Nqobile, we were speaking about hoping that families would be able to identify their family members so that they can get any closure after this tragic incident. Based on your engagements, how long is this identification process set to take? Will they be burying their loved ones anytime soon?
Well, Rafiwa, it looks like it's still going to be a bit of time before they're able to bury their loved ones. From our understanding at this point, we know that the families were taking swabs at the hospital in Nqobile, which we understand at this point that those swabs then are still yet to be, they are the beginning of the DNA process where they're going to identify some of the members or some of the people that had passed on here, where of course we're standing. We do know that they already know their names and an identification because the taxi that they were on as well also had a list of the people that were there. So they had their names as well as their identification. Also because it's a long distance taxi, we do know some of the families are as far as in Malamlele, whilst others are even as far as Mpumalanga. So this is going to take some time. We understand that the bodies were burnt beyond recognition. So as a result, they are relying fully on the DNA process, which will then help the families identify who exactly was there and to also get that sense of closure and be able to get that body to also bury. We know that the burial process as well might also be assisted by REF, but we do know that that process in itself also takes some time. So you might find a situation where some of the families will have to bury their own people and then they will have to claim back from the road accident fund. And of course the swabs will also take about 2 weeks to identify the people, but we do know that the officials are saying they are going to prioritize these families, and so they're going to try as much as they can to ensure that they can identify them for less than 2 weeks. But again, where we are standing, you can still just see it's still very fresh, and just as much as how the family felt, this is very new. I mean, we have interacted with some of the families, Rafiwa, and they're very devastated. I mean, in fact, one of the mother who said her daughter was in the car. She said she doesn't even know where her daughter was going because she left her at home in Mpumalanga, but she was on her way to Polokwane. She said this is like a movie, so they're still at this point still trying to figure out what is the way forward, what is going on. She said she was still just taking it in one day at a time. The aunt spoke to us, she was just in tears. She was praying the entire time. She said she doesn't know how she's going to go forward. The fond memories that they had of this 27-year-old that passed away in this area. So very difficult indeed for a lot of families. We do understand as well, Rafiwa, I'm just going to get out a little bit so you can see some of the families are also just arriving. We do know that, of course, more of the families were here much earlier on. So some of them now arriving to the scene to, of course, identify what happened. And, of course, you will see. So it's a very difficult time for these families. And they just want to get that sense of closure. And that's why we find ourselves here today.
Scene and time indeed, Nqobile, but did any of the family members who were there earlier share why they felt it was important to visit that scene?
Well, from what we understood and what we could gather as well from some of the officials that we spoke to is that this is a process and a cultural process too, as well as a religious process that they follow, where they are able to come and pay their respect, of course, in the area, and also to be able to take the spirits, as it's believed that they can take the spirits and go home and be able to communicate with that person. You'll know from our ancestral understanding understanding, we have seen this over time. So again, Refiwa, their family members still looking at the scene just to get some sense of closure and to start or to begin that process where they're able to take or lift off the spirits and be able to take them back home. It is something that mostly it's believed in, that when you're able to take the spirits and the person is able to rest in peace and is able to be part with the ancestors. So the family is still, of course, coming to the scene. They are still looking, and just to see the remainder of what remains there. I mean, some of the parts that we've seen here on the scene, Refiwa, is things like a shoe sole, which is what remains here, but most of the stuff is really burnt. You could see there's nothing left. So just little bits that's there. The family just looking. Some of them were very emotional. Much earlier, you could see families just crying. So it's a sense of closure, and at the same time, that process beginning in terms of culturally and religiously.
Absolutely. Very, very tragic time indeed. And Nqobile Madlala bringing us the latest from that tragic accident that killed that many people who were burnt actually beyond recognition.